I'd like to welcome Morgan Johnson, Associate Vice President for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, to introduce our panel as well as moderate it. Morgan, the floor is yours.
Thanks for that welcome, Kate, and welcome to everyone to day 2 of TLC. Really excited to be here this morning. Our Dean panel really every year is one of the favorite sessions. So thank you so much to Dr. Iris Lafferty and Bob Dougherty for being here. Iris, Bob, I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves quickly to folks that might not be familiar with you on the line.
Okay, I will start. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those on the East Coast. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. My name is Iris Lafferty. I have been here at Ashford for 7 years and got my start at the College of Ed as a program chair. I'm so excited to go ahead and meet with you today.
All right, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Kate. And greetings, everybody from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm Bob Dougherty. I'm the Dean of the Forbes School of Business and Technology. I'm actually in a conference room at the American Modern Insurance Group, which is a specialty insurance company with over 1,100 employees. And what's quite remarkable is nearly 200 of their employees have taken courses at Ashford, and 60 of them have graduated. So I'm actually here as a mini celebration to help those students graduate, and also to meet with some of the top level folks here, because the parent company of American Modern wants to introduce Ashford into the broader company. But by quick way of background, I've been the executive dean at the Forbes School of Business for over 4 years now. It seems like I just joined 3 months ago. It's been an action-packed 4 years. Prior to that, I've had a career in academia and in business. And so I've had one foot in each of those disciplines for the last 30 plus years. I hold a couple of graduate degrees. I don't have a terminal degree, but Iris Lafferty continues to badger me that I should go back and finish. So maybe that will happen in the next 18 to 24 months, but I'm delighted to be here today.
Thank you so much, Bob, and really excited to moderate our panel today. So we'll just jump right in. We have several questions for both of you. For those on the line, the Q&A option is open, so feel free to post questions in Q&A as well. And after we kind of wrap up with our formal questions, we will take questions from the audience. So first, we had Dr. Marie Sini, the president of CALE, close the conference yesterday with a keynote, and she talked about closing the skills gap. Can you talk about how Ashford's doing that?
Iris, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. I can kick that off. I think the NACE competencies, which are the National Association of Colleges and Employers, are competencies that we will be embracing, have already in some of the programs, and will continue to embrace. Those competencies really delineate 7 core competencies that organization believes form career readiness. And so a lot of those happily, and I know Tricia Lauer, our assessment guru, is celebrating this, because those competencies are also overlapping with the WASC core competencies that we as an institution already put into play. There will be more of a mindfulness toward those competencies, and you guys are welcome if you just Google NACE competencies, you can get that information more specifically. In addition to those, the skills gap, if you think about it from an looking at adult learning, you think about how students are engaged and purposeful in what they do at work, and then also think about the bridge that happens in the school setting, in the classroom setting. So the work that we're doing all together will go ahead and close the skills gap by bridging together the classroom work along with the work in the field itself. And I know Bob can come and support some of these with more specifics. I'll give him a chance at it right here.
Thanks, Iris. Yeah, I'm sure I'm like everybody else. I thought Dr. Sini's presentation yesterday was riveting on so many different levels, and she has lived what we live each and every day as educators of adult students. And as she said, our students are dedicated and committed to learning, but they all have competing interests and responsibilities. And, the one thing I really took to heart was, how do you teach power skills, communication, emotional intelligence, and how do you go into a workforce and try to influence people? I mean, those are really profound, important skills. And then if you, broaden that out to what are the skills that our students need to do to be successful, it's a daunting challenge. But just to give you some sense of what we're doing at the business school, one of our goals for this year is to identify all those skills that are being taught in each of our programs and aligning our program curricula to at least one industry standard, and also tying that to programmatic accreditation, as well as tying it to a professional organization. And so, for each one of our programs, we've established advisory committees so that our lead faculty members now can interact with leading industry professionals. And we use these boards, we use these committees to really conduct detailed surveys and interviews to understand what are those skills that each of those employers are going to need for those employees to be successful. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted. I'm getting invaded into this conference room, but I do think it's I guess two other just quick ones. We are also sponsoring a number of professional associations, and so that our students, we encourage our students to, for example, in HR, to join their SHRM chapter, and we've also aligned much of our curricula to the SHRM standards. So as I said, it's a daunting challenge, but I know across the university we're addressing it, and certainly within the business school, it's one of our annual goals.
I think the other thing I'd add to that too is, I want to honor the work that has already been done in the programs and the colleges. It's not like this is a new thing for Ashford to go ahead and, make efforts to closing the skills gap. As Bob was speaking, I think of programs like the MS in Instructional Design and Technology, where each and every one of the work, the competencies from that professional accrediting body is actually aligned to each and every one of the course learning outcomes. So there has been very much a mindful and intentionality to it. But at this point, we can really speak to it as an institution as a whole, and it's foremost and primary on our list of things to do.
Thank you both. I actually think you've already addressed this next question, but if there's anything else you'd want to add, can you talk a little bit about how Ashford is integrating employers specifically, and then industry, really experts and thought leaders, into our curriculum process?
Yeah, we could spend a better part of an hour on that, Morgan. Just within the business school, I'll give one quick example. With we revamped our Masters of Science in Finance, and we've aligned that to what's called the Chartered Financial Analyst standards, called the CFA. And within the world of finance, that's effectively getting a doctoral degree in finances to get your CFA. It takes 3 years. It's very, very, very rigorous. And so what we've done under the leadership of Kevin Kuznia was to work with the CFA standards board to adopt all of the requirements, at least for the first year. So the student that will get an MS in finance from us would effectively complete a year to a year and a half of the CFA. But I'm not doing justice. I know I will hear from many of my faculty members after this presentation. But we are aligned with well in excess of 30 leading industries, and work very closely with all of their advisory boards.
On the arts and sciences side, I think the best thing is I get to know these programs and the team behind them. I think about the accreditation and the commitment that we have to the health sciences and keeping those accreditation pieces and making sure that those areas grow. So for example, for the accreditation, which is fondly known as CAHIM, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Health Informatics and Information Management Education, we remain, listening to that body as an industry leader, and we are accredited through December 2027. We have a couple of forms to fill out to make sure that, we continue that accreditation. For example, the change in program director work. It's a substantive change, and that work is already in place. In addition, the Commission on Collegiate Nursing Education, CCNE, we remain accredited there from now until, December 2023. So I think those commitments stay still, and that's how we have our connections in part to employers and industry leaders.
Thank you both. Kind of shifting now, Iris, we just celebrated our first doctoral graduates at our recent commencement ceremony. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
I think I've shared before, I typically am not the weeping sort, but truly graduation pulls at my heartstrings. That doctoral graduation was humbling in many respects. You see the tenacity of the students, the families and friends, faculty that supported them to reach that goal. I think there was an immense amount of pride and an honoring of the Rockies work, because the doctoral programs came from our Rockies merger. And just to be able to see more concrete spaces like the poster session that Peggy Sundstrom, in addition to the CETL team, really took lead on, got so much feedback about how rewarding it was to see students' research in a concrete manner displayed conference style, and had the opportunity to listen to a number of those dissertation and project presentations go through, coupled with the hooding ceremony, another tearjerker. So if anybody missed the doctoral ceremony this last time, I really invite all those to come and attend. It does speak to the continued doctoral support that we have planned. I did have some feedback on email, some folks, everyone, associate faculty members and other folks asking as to whether or not we have that commitment to continue our doctoral programs. And quite honestly, I think it would show if we did not, then they would not be with us today. But we have a strong team. We continue to build there in that space. And in fact, those doctoral programs are now embedded in verticals within their appropriate fields. And so, whereas it was standing alone as a doctoral college, we now have the benefit of managing the work together in terms of resource work and work. So anyway, I could go on and on about that, but what I think maybe the short answer that I would say is that was really a shift for me to see. We continue to talk about legacy students who are somewhat stuck at the dissertation process. And I think that's going to move to a legacy of students for us at Ashford.
Thanks for sharing, Iris. Bob, you also just recently hosted the Thought Leaders Summit where Steve Forbes spoke. Can you talk a little bit about the future relationship with Forbes?
Sure. It might be worth a second just talking about Forbes for those of our faculty who are not part of the business school, just so you have some context and some sense of Forbes. So Forbes Media, of which the business school has a partnership, is a 102-year-old organization. It was founded by a guy named B.C. Forbes, who had an 8th grade education in 1917. And he always used to like to say that it started right before the Russian Revolution, which then ushered in communism. And communism obviously was an abject failure of the last century. And Forbes celebrated capitalism and free market principles and individual liberty and so forth. So over the last 100 years, Forbes has become a very successful multinational, I call them an educator of cutting edge trends and leading technologies and innovations. But their first claim to fame in what BC Forbes did 100 years ago was to measure wealth. And so he was a guy that was walking around Wall Street selling stock tips for 25 cents, and then came up with the idea of putting out a list of the 25 richest people in New York City. And that sold like hotcakes. And it's fascinating what that, I'm sure there's a number of sociologists on the line as well that understand that as a species, we like to rank and measure and compare ourselves to each other. And certainly measuring wealth is one of those things. So today, the Forbes 400 list of the wealthiest people in the world is always their bestseller and gets a lot of attention. But Forbes today operates in over 120 countries. They've got 2,700 contributing editors that report on every industry, market segment, economic indicator, you name it, they do it. And what they really are focused on are two things: leadership and really wanting to get at the heart of how entrepreneurial capitalism can help make the future more prosperous and secure for everybody. And so one of the things that they're taking on is agriculture, which, you know, when you think of Forbes, you typically don't think of agriculture. And I'm from Ohio, and I have a lot of farmers in my family, and I'm not sure how many of the farmers think about Forbes, but the reason they're thinking about agriculture is right now there's roughly 6 billion people on the planet. We're going to go to 9 billion people. So it begs the question, how are we going to feed 3 billion more people? And their view is entrepreneurs are actually going to come up with new ideas, new ways to sustain the planet and to feed all those people and ideally raise those people's standards of living. So I think it's a noble mission, and certainly it's great for Ashford to be a partner with Forbes. So to bring it now to the present day, so 6.5 years ago now, Ashford University entered into a 12-year partnership with Forbes, and there was a well over a dozen points to the agreement, one of which was that we could rename the business school the Forbes School of Business. And then there's also a number of things around us getting access to their content. So they truly have a library of over 100 years of articles and case studies and research on business trends and so forth. And so there's 5.5 years left on our agreement with them. And recently, Steve Forbes and the CEO of Forbes Media, Mike Federle, came to us, and they've been so pleased with the progress that we've made in our commitment to adult learners, and just frankly the quality of education that we're providing. And they've asked if we'd be interested in extending the contract another 12 years, which is just terrific news and speaks volume to the quality of education and all of the faculty and staff that we have at the business school. So you mentioned the Thought Leader Summit, Morgan. Yes, for the last 3 years, every year at Torrey Pines Lodge, we've hosted what we call the Thought Leader Summit. And Steve Forbes has been our keynote speaker every year. He also serves as our chairman of our board of advisors, and the board meets 3 or 4 times a year. And we've been fortunate to recruit over a dozen just world-class thinkers, former chief learning officer of Qualcomm, the former chief learning officer of Goldman Sachs, the former publisher of Forbes, the editor of Real Clear Markets, one of the top people at the Hudson Institute. The list goes on, but it's been a great asset to the leadership team of the business school to help us think about future trends, you know, where markets are going, as well as to help us think about how to address the skills gap, and what are those things that what are those skills that our students are going to need to be successful. And I'll I'll be quiet because I'm rambling here. But the one other thing I'd add, and Mark Mills, who's on our advisory board and has advised several presidents of the United States on technology. He talks about robotics a great deal and how robots are replacing a great many jobs, and then and it always begs the question, well, are there going to be jobs? And his argument always is yes. As a species, we're very industrious, and it feels good to get up every morning and make a difference in the world and make a difference in people's lives. And 100 years ago, when the horse buggy went out of business and people were skeptical about whether or not the car industry was going to take all the jobs, well, here we are 100 years later, and the standard of living continues to grow and prosperity spreads. So, but anyway, long answer, short question. The relationship with Forbes is very good.
Bob, I'd like to sign up for the MBA, please. I'm so convinced.
No, Bob, thanks. Thank you for sharing that. Great context. And this is, I think, related to, some of the pieces you just shared about the Forbes relationship. Our educational partnerships in general at Ashford have continued to increase over the last several years. Can you both talk a little bit about, where we're at with educational partnerships in general, and then how you see that playing a part of our strategic direction?
Iris, do you want to go first?
I feel like you and I are both looking at each other to say, like, this is a really exciting part of where of where Ashford is headed. And mine will be a brief answer, because again, the College of Arts and Sciences is comprised essentially of programs from the College of Ed, the College of Liberal Arts, and then the College of Health and Human Services, from those programs from the past. As I get to know these, I was privy to a conversation. I met with our lead in the nursing program and had the wonderful opportunity to have Dr. Bob Paxton nearby. And in about 3 minutes, I was ready to sign up for the nursing program with that promise of an understanding of really how that field works. So we do have partnerships in tow. I don't have the details, is kind of my long answer to the ones that are attached to the colleges I'm getting, the areas I'm getting to know. However, I know that Dr. Tony Farrell at the College of Ed has done yeoman's work to go ahead and partner with places like No Excuses University, and has had the opportunity to provide scholarships for teachers coming in, partnering with those folks. In addition, there have been early childhood education partnerships that have been a brew and have really pulled the attention, I will say, to the opportunities that are available for educational partnerships as well. So I'm kind of leaving you with a cliffhanger, and then we'll punt to my colleague Bob Doherty here for specifics.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things to add to what Iris was sharing. I think educational partnerships are, in many respects, the future of enrollment for Ashford. And I also think they're the future of enrollment for most universities. I'm of the belief that over the next 5 to 10 years, college and university education is going to be fundamentally transformed. And you've seen it in the last 10 years, the small liberal arts college, not necessarily become extinct, but it's certainly on the endangered species list, right? And we're always hearing about schools that are effectively going under or making severe changes. So what has happened at Ashford and Zovio over the last 3 years, and I give Michael Rolnick tremendous credit. I've said this for the last 2 years. The most important person at Zovio is Michael Rolnick. And the reason I've said that is he started with the team 3 years ago with 5 people. He's grown it to over 100. And he's gone out and shouted from the mountaintops that we've got this tuition reimbursement program. We've got these programs that a student can effectively come to Ashford and not have to take on debt, but have their employer pay $5,000 or $6,000 roughly a year, and that student can come and become one of our students. And so at the business school, we've embraced him, and I'm confident Iris in Arts and Sciences is going to pick up with what her colleagues have already started, is to not only just have him go out and meet the CEOs and the heads of HR and pitch this great economic deal. And so that's not necessarily a tough sale. What becomes the piece that really makes it work is when he has folks from the Forbes School of Business and Technology show up and present to give them a sense of the quality of education, the quality of instructor that we have. So, Dr. Karen Ivey, she's a road warrior out there presenting at, a number of corporations, Maya Zellick, Bill Davis, and the list goes on of people that are, and it's a great form of partnership inside the organization to help us build bridges with companies and organizations outside. So, and the results, I think, speak for themselves. Right now, 1/3 of our students within the business school are through academic partnerships. Nearly 60% of our students in the MBA program, which is one of the biggest programs in the university with over 1,600 students, 60% of those 1,600 students come through partnerships. And so to say I'm bullish is probably an understatement, but I think it's really important.
Thank you both. And Bob, I think you shared this for some folks on the line earlier, but you are currently in Cincinnati with one of our educational partners, correct?
I am. And so, yeah, so if you didn't hear earlier, I'm at the American Modern Insurance Group, which is a specialty insurer. They do the traditional types of insurance, but they also do boat insurance and motorcycle insurance. Say that 3 times fast. But it's a company with over 1,100 employees, and nearly 200 of their employees have taken courses at Ashford, and 60 have graduated. So I'm actually here for a graduation celebration for those 60 students, and to encourage the other 40 to keep on trucking and to finish their degrees. And also meeting with Michael Rolnick and some of the people here that the corporate parent of American Modern is a group called Munich Re, which is an enormous company, and they're very interested in having Ashford become a academic partner. So.
Great, thank you so much. Just to pivot a little bit now, Iris, can you talk about the vision for our in our Center for Enhanced First-Year Student Experience? And I think this dovetails nicely with a few of the questions that have come in through Q&A from folks wanting to hear a little bit about, just your goal for that group and maybe some of the services that will be offered.
Thanks, Morgan. It certainly is, a focal point of conversation. We recognize that 50% of our students are in that space right now, and therefore, I have to say, a wonderfully comprised team with the leadership of Dr. Justin Harrison there in carrying out the vision to intentionally weave the NACE competencies in a contextualized way into the curriculum. I think the focus is really on the idea of the experience of that that first entree point into Ashford, that it is relevant for the field, that students come in not necessarily APA, restricted by APA savviness, but instead are engaged in the curriculum as they walk into the institution by works that are relevant to their major in business management or in nursing, for example. We continue to work on the details of that space, and would like to come back to a larger crowd and share it as those details are, refined. But what I really see there is that there is a teaching to the student, teaching the student as opposed to teaching the courses. And the work I'm already seeing the the enthusiasm from the faculty there and from the leadership there, they're recognizing that the drive will be in really having a transparent pedagogy for the students so that students understand why they are engaged in a particular assignment and how it's related to the work that they're, wanting to gain, through their Ashford experience. I could go on again, so I'm going to kind of pause there and see if there were questions, Morgan, that you said that there were some questions coming in, if there were any other specifics that I can kind of go over. It's not going to be necessarily a number of courses or the courses living in a particular place, but think of the courses as being integrated into the arts and sciences as well as into Forbes. It will really be a hand-in-hand collaboration with the Forbes School of Technology in development of the courses, and the ones that are relevant to the arts and sciences will be that same way. I even daydream. I have a close instructional designer friend, and she talks about the choosing one's own adventure within the course itself. So imagine having the camaraderie between a Forbes student and an arts and science student, and that they're in the same course shell, but at some level, those discussions or the assignments or the debate or the perspective on somebody's latest tweet is actually merged from the different perspectives coming in. It truly is the gestalt of that experience as a whole.
Thank you, Iris, for sharing that. I think one of the questions specifically too was, how do you envision mentoring being a partnership with that group?
It is actually, as I've divvied it up, that is the mindful yet phase 2 portion. We have quite a bit of detailed work first that will come to that, but the mentorship will have that same mirrored approach in that you don't get, it's not the reading specialist that comes to your K-12 classroom and it's a pull-out program, like that person gets mentored, that person gets mentored. We really see an interwoven approach to it, and again, that's more to come.
And Morgan, the only thing I would add, and the first year experience, I think, is everybody in the university's responsibility. And I appreciate from a reporting standpoint, it now fits in arts and sciences. And I sincerely want to give a shout out to Justin and his team over the last several years, and what they've done with Doge has been remarkable. But as Dr. Sini said yesterday, and she quoted Carol Clausen, who's one of our board members at Ashford University. She's on the board of trustees, and Carol often talks about identity of student. And for a working adult who has been out of school for a while, their identity is not always necessarily tied to, am I really a student? And so it's really incumbent on all of us as educators, not only in the first year, but all the way up until they graduate, to say, yes, you are a student, and yes, you are capable of doing this. One thing I also thought that she said was interesting was that adult students are transactional, that they're very focused on, I want to get this degree, I want to demonstrate competence, and I want to be able to use this degree to go out and be successful, either in my current job or to go get a job. And as I said, that's first year, that's during their entire course of study. So, and I would also add, Craig Swenson's vision for the university, I think, really ties to that. And I suspect we'll get into it later on in this conversation around the number of degree programs and moving to areas of emphasis. But that is it's a much more linear approach, which I think makes a heck of a lot of sense. The first year experience, in my view, is all around equipping the student to take on that identity, but also to develop those core skills to make them successful. And, selfishly, as the dean of the business school, and you'd expect me to say this, is I would like to have more business education in the first year experience. And that's why I'm very optimistic working with Iris and Justin and others that, we're going to roll up our sleeves and think through how can we, perhaps put some business case studies into that first year, so that if a student comes to Ashford and says, hey, I want to be a business student, and historically we've waited a very long time before they've had really access to a business degree. And I have a master's degree. I have in business. I also have a master's degree in liberal arts. So I'm a huge believer in liberal arts. And I also know that history, sociology, philosophy, there's a number of ways that you can actually use the discipline of business to teach those core things. So, we can talk about Herodotus or Irvine or whatever, or we can actually use the history of all sorts of different things to teach the principles. But in any event, now I am going to step off my soapbox, but I'm very passionate about it. I think Iris is going to do a great job, but as I said, it's everybody's responsibility for the first year.
Thank you both very much. You just mentioned, Bob, Craig's really vision and announcement last week included information about really refocusing our structure moving forward on core programs and emphasis. What are you both most excited about?
I could take a first stab at that. First of all, you come close and you look at that plan of core programs and emphases and start to think about it and reflect on it. And honestly, it's brilliant. Craig's approach to bringing the resources closer to the student, so he says, is his goal, and not to lose one in the process. I think it really, in many ways, can be done. Part of the experience that I have, once upon a time, my work was with Top Gun pilots in the Navy. And yes, it was kind of in the 80s when Tom Cruise was over here at the Miramar Air Base. And it's actually my background here behind my window, you can see the air base from here. But the problem with the Top Gun pilots was that we had a retention problem in the Navy at that time, despite the nice big movie. And what we learned was that these pilots actually needed a little bit more flexibility and a little bit of control over what they were studying in terms of their version of professional development. They also, at the same time, needed to know what their career pathways were to look like. They were in the Navy for 6-8 years, and if they said yes to the next gig, what would that mean for them? Now you step back and you think about the emphases, and it actually accomplishes that. It is a managed approach and an advised managed approach to offering to the student, would you like a little bit more flexibility in the with the core program that you are taking? So if you are majoring in early childhood education, you can traipse over and grab an emphasis from the business school that may make you an even sharper provider for early childhood care and run that business like nobody's business. It also, at the same time, draws more closely some value add to a CV, and therefore bringing the perspective of a career pathway closer in hand. So an emphasis is 3 courses added to the program of study that a student already has. So, you continue to do the math and you look to the number of core programs we have and then the offerings of the emphases, because you can go ahead again and take an emphasis even if it isn't aligned to your field of study. You have a multiplicity of options, but each and every one of those options, because it has been vetted and considered in the field, that they make sense and that they can add to that individual's career pathway. So that's, I want to stand up out of my chair. You can see that's what I'm excited about, is in the flexibility and yet thoughtfulness that the students will have in hand.
Yeah, Morgan, I think I would only echo what Iris just just said. You know, at the business school, and just so for people have context, and I think Craig shared this, but you know, repetition is the mother of all skill. You know, a few years ago, as enrollments were declining, the geniuses at Zovio said we need to expand the number of programs, which would only exacerbate small class sizes. And I think any faculty member that has had to teach a course with 1, 2, or 3 students will very quickly tell us that's not the best way to teach our students. And so, you know, Craig's view, and I agree with it strongly, is that let's focus on a core set of degree programs, but then allow students, and this really fits, I think, in all of the curriculum across the university, but as an example within business. So we offer what we call the BOM, which is the BA in Organizational Management, ably run by Dr. Jim Jeremiah. And within that program, it's actually our highest graduation rate program within the business school. And it's a general degree in management. And any of our students that graduate with that degree, I think, are going to be very successful and competitive in the business world. But if during their course of study, let's say they're working in the hotel industry, or if they could not only just get a general management degree, but then get a 3-course, take 3 courses in hospitality management or service management, and they could then go to their existing employer or to an employer and say, yes, I've got a general management degree, but I also have leading edge knowledge on the various topics within that industry. And that holds for supply chain management, operations management, and so forth. And as well as, you know, a few years ago, we changed the name of the business school from the Forbes School of Business to the Forbes School of Business and Technology. And so now we offer a number of tech degree programs. And so if I'm a student getting a BS in information technology, which now has nearly 1,000 students in it, it's one of our fastest growing programs across the university. And those types of technical degrees, if they're able to take courses, the 3-course emphasis, perhaps in another area within arts and sciences for that matter, whether they're a healthcare professional or working with, you know, if they're working in IT and education, for them to be able to take a 3-course emphasis, it's a model that helps our students, I think, compete more successfully in the labor market. And, you know, it's going to require some internal gymnastics by all of us, you know, to make sure that we get the curriculum right. And Katie Shea, you know, I think we'll probably have a drinking problem when it's all said and done in the registrar's office to make sure that everything is fixed. But all the kidding aside, it's incumbent on us to help our students be successful and compete. And I think this approach is going to really help us do that.
Thank you both so much. There was a question, and Iris, maybe you can address this one that came in you had mentioned students in current and existing programs. How will they be supported through this transition?
There is, you know, the students in our existing programs will continue to exist in the programs that they have signed up for. You know, they will continue in the courses as planned. However, and I've heard Craig say this too, I imagine picking up a phone and saying, okay, I know you've opted for the, you know, MA in Early Childhood Leader, the MEASL. And in addition, you know, would you like to have this option, or, you know, picking on an undergrad program, you know, could you consider also moving from the existing BA in, we fondly call it EDDI within the walls here, but it's the curriculum development, going to forget the actual acronym of that ECE program. But instead of staying in that program, have the opportunity to maximize, again, your learning and pick up an emphasis or two by moving over to this other program. I think the bottom line is that there should be no interruption to the students that are currently engaged in the programs that they're with, that they still do exist here. It's just that we have stopped enrollment in those particular programs.
Thanks so much, Iris. And going to address one of the questions in Q&A right now. So can you both discuss a bit about how do you see specific trends around certificates, the unbundling of degrees and badging having an impact on our future priorities?
Iris, I'll start if that's all right.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think badging and alternative credentials are again a mega trend that is hitting us and hitting lots of universities. You know, bear with me for 1 minute. I always like to say the stock market, you know, predicts the future by either 3 months or 3 years. And 3 years ago, LinkedIn bought Linda, and Linda is I'm sure people know Linda. It's a well in excess of a couple thousand courses, and they offer badges and credentials. LinkedIn was then bought by Microsoft for $25 billion. And Microsoft's bet is that alternative credentials and the ability to demonstrate or put your CV, your resume, demonstrate your competence on social media through that platform is really the future. And so for us, I think, and I give Dr. Ray Powers a lot of credit at the business school for leading our effort around alternative credentials and badging. So we've incubated something called the Knowledge Innovation Center, and which is effectively our School of Continuing Education at FSBT. And we've established partnerships with well over 40 leading industry training companies that offer courses and credentials. And so we've worked closely with the registrar, Katie Shea, in the registrar's office to build a catalog of nearly 2,000 courses that students can take a course through one of these partners. We would then, those courses have already been PLA approved for anywhere from 1 to 4 credits. And it's really a bridge for those students to come into the university. But it's also a way for us to think about short form credentials to give them a badge in a specific discipline or a certificate of some kind. And so I think within the business school, we're going to be allocating a fair amount of our time, energy, and budget in the future to do that.
We have a shared vision there. And I think, again, if you step back and look at the design of the idea of core programs and then the emphases options, that it really, we're poised for very focused and purposeful growth. And then looking at it from a student's perspective, you can go ahead and attain something. I would be that student potentially with immediate gratification needs. Like, so I work so hard, I come home, I go online, and after 3 courses, if I'm able to go ahead and engage in the Knowledge Innovation Center and grab a certificate, I'm kind of feeling better about the time that I'd spent in these last 3 courses. And I would, just mark time in that way, just, a little attaboys in the between with meaningful certificates on the way. So we're excited, Bob.
Thank you both. This is a 2-parter, this next one. Can you both talk a little bit about the future goals to support doctoral students navigating the dissertation process and also opportunities that might exist for postdoc work?
I'll take a stab at that. One of the things that I believe that is really promising here, the College of Doctoral Studies had they continue to have such great ideas, the faculty there, as to really the areas of opportunity regarding ways to help doctoral students progress. And having had an opportunity to lead that group and listen to where those opportunities were, I've asked that Dr. Barbara Zorn-Arnold come and join the team with the Arts and Sciences, and she is dedicated fully to the analytics and the drive of doctoral and graduate student progression. So she will work hand in hand with Dr. Steve Nettles' team, a quiet partner, but one that really we just lean so much into the work that they do there at institutional effectiveness to really take that data-driven and informed approach and couple it with the strategies that we in this past year have identified for the College of Doctoral Studies with regard to how to help those students progress, not just through the core programs, even though that's even slightly different. We recognize that from a master's to a doctoral program, but really through the proposal and then on process, the journey of the doctoral program that feels oh so lonely, that the operational aspects of it, the data behind it, the strategy to initiate and embed it into the everyday practice here, I believe is going to be a stronghold. Such great promise there. We already met yesterday, and part of the strength there too is that Tricia Lauer's team carries some of the operational aspects of it. Morgan, I know your team helps to manage all of the faculty and the chair assignments. We lean on Haley Pessner for the scheduling of our in-residency workshops. And as one tribute, for example, we are recommending and even beyond that requiring that doctoral students attend the first in-residence workshop in person, recognizing the strength of the build of community when you have that interaction with your mentors and peers in real time over a weekend. So I am super excited. Again, the commitment is very strong to the doctoral programs, and I'm really looking to that team to moving the needle forward. I think there was a second aspect of your question, and that is the postdoc. Was that the question, Morgan? I think there too that of course we really want to get our students through that option, and I have a great model that I live with in terms of doctoral studies. Of my oldest daughter is in her PhD program right now, and I'm actually learning from the experience that she is engaged in about what the areas that we can continue to grow. So for example, she will walk out of her institution having a visiting professor designation at an incredible university. And that process began day one when she walked into that program. And because of that day one process, for example, she's learning how to write a course. And while being mentored in that process, that course now appears on the course catalog and is being offered in the fall of next year. She's on her second course and she will be teaching that in the following spring of next year. And so I say that in the context of what we can do with our students postdoc is to really support them in that career trajectory in terms of what they're doing with their PsyD or their PhD in education. I foresee work coming alongside mentorships with full-time faculty members. And then while we are a teaching institution, having contributions to that teaching as well. Again, the poster session, for example, just opens the door. Morgan, the symposium that the doctoral programs engaged in this past year, are also indications of where we will be going so that there is a presence of our doctoral program graduates in conferences and in the field.
Thanks so much, Iris. We'd probably have time for 2 more questions. Bob, Iris, can you both share some insights into what types of innovations within the classroom or our curriculum processes that we might expect to see in 2020?
I love that question. If you don't mind me jumping in real quick, Iris. You know, within the business school, we introduced simulation, gamification, game-based learning in the rebuild of our MBA program, and as well as we're moving that into a number of other courses. But we intend to introduce chatbots, you know, to make the learning much more personalized and engaging. You know, we really want to take adaptive learning to the next level. And, you know, the business school was one of the first to pilot a couple of those early beta tests, and we're keen to move that forward. So, you know, I'm excited by the things that Dr. Jorge Cardenas has done, leading professional studies. You know, he was instrumental in building out the simulation for the capstone in a couple of our programs, and you know, they're really fascinating exercises for students that it's really summative learning, so that the student has to, in one instance, become the head of a healthcare company, and over the course of you know, the several weeks, they actually face all sorts of different challenges that any leader of a business organization or manager would face. And so I give him a tremendous amount of credit for doing that. And then Katie Theory, who I want to give a shout out, has been promoted to a department chair, and she'll be overseeing organizational studies. I know she's already done a number of very innovative things in the human resource programs that we offer, and excited to see what comes out of org studies this coming year.
So you know what, I love those innovations, and I am probably equally excited about behind the innovations, because we have an opportunity to go ahead and revisit our course development process. And I recognize that we have potentially folks from the general public here, but in the past, you know, we were likened to some, I would say in a loving way, as a 10-foot toddler, this institution, that we just kind of grew processes because we needed to manage our spurts of growth. And now we have an opportunity to take a pause and really revisit the meaningful activities that back up and support course development. So to be able to bring that 10-foot toddler to a right size, at least an adolescent, I'd like to say something more in their 20s, where we have a frontal lobe that is making good critical decisions about our processes. I think that's what I'm really excited about. And I know that our associate faculty members that are engaged in course development, and our faculty members over here full time, have in the past had some levels of frustration, let's be honest, that there aren't enough resources, or it takes way too long to go ahead and fix something that seemingly is easy. So I looked to those processes as being more nimble and thoughtfully carried out in a more efficient way.
Thank you both. So last question, what are you both excited for 2020?
I usually drink really good champagne on New Year's Eve, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. No, I'm sincerely looking forward to you know, the organization evolving rapidly and competing, and you know, there's sort of this unspoken. We're in this unspoken time where our parent organization has said, "Oh, the university's for sale," and you know, we continue to seek a number of strategic alternatives. You know, at the end of the day, the reason we all get up every day is to go help our students, and it's truly a privilege to be an educator. And so I think 2020 is going to have lots of changes, and whether we are an independent not-for-profit university or if we're a part of a big state institution, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that all of our students are counting on us to be successful and help them achieve what they want to achieve. So I'm looking forward to continuing to do that.
We probably have, we're over a minute, but I'm going to echo Bob's sentiments and just really the idea of focused, purposeful growth, having that student-focused vision. But I also look forward to differentiating Ashford in an incredibly positive way against our competitors. And that's not my competitive side talking.